Hey, everybody. Thank you all for coming to today's webinar. With us today, we have Josh Nickel, the VP for the Equipment and Events segment at ARA, as well as TexAutoZone's Senior Director of Product, Adam Croft. And without further ado, I will hand the reins over to them.
All right, awesome. Well, happy to be here with you guys. Love seeing how many people are interested in seeing how AI and technology is going to be shaping the rental industry. So look forward to a great discussion here with Josh. We're going to be going through a couple items here, but really it's meant to be informal. And as Matt mentioned, the key of this is your questions. So we'll have some time dedicated at the end for Q&A. But if you have questions as you're going along, as you think of something that maybe spinning off what we said, feel free to throw it in there. We'll save some questions for the end and possibly inject some as we're going along as well. So um, we'll be talking a little bit about different ways technology is being impacted or how rental is being impacted by technology and some future opportunities, and talk about some areas where rental businesses have been able to apply this, and more of an open question. So with that, pleased to be here with Josh, um, and appreciate your time. You do lots of these speaking engagements and write lots of thoughtful content, and appreciate your time, as I know you've done a lot of work thinking through the how automation and AI can shape the rental industry. So
Absolutely,
uh,
I'm happy to do it.
sounds good. Well, with that, let's dive in here. We've got a couple things here. So the first slide came from some of the research that you've worked on. So you just want to tell us a little bit about kind of what you're seeing from this perspective.
Yeah, and to give a little bit of background on this research is we researched hundreds, if not thousands, of contractors over the last few years to try and understand where they're going and what they're thinking. And we didn't go after contractors that particularly had or hadn't rented. We just wanted a good sample size. So we had a good confidence of this is what the average contractor wants, and this is what the average contractor was looking for. And we got some really good information. Some of it we aren't covering today, but one data point that I love to point out is that 99% of contractors that we surveyed intended on renting over the next 12 months. And that's of all contractors, not contractors who have rented in the past necessarily. So rental is critically important right now. And so, that certainly excites me. I'm sure it excites everybody who's on the call. But some things that are changing that I think are important to think about is customer behavior. 2020 was obviously a real shock to the system, but it was certainly a shock to a non-digitized ecosystem. The rental industry has always been a handshake industry. It's been a relationship in-person industry. And I'm not saying that that has completely changed, but I think there were a lot of contractors who were laying in bed in 2020 or 2021, thinking about their job site the next morning at 10 o'clock at night. And we're like, I need a cutoff saw. And doing it online would be really kind of great right now, rather than having to try and call a sales rep or look online, or maybe they're able to text their sales rep. And so some of that, I think, drove customer behavior to be a little bit faster than usual. And so the slide that we're looking at here is where customers are likely to complete rental transactions, where they're going to do that. And what you see is that you see a drop off on in-person, an increase in website, a drop off on phone, an increase in email. I mean, the trend's quite obvious. People want more digital ways to do business. Now, that doesn't mean that's the only way they want to do business. I think it is still a relationship business. So if you're establishing a relationship, if it's a first-time renter, if it's a contractor that you don't work with, then they want to see you. They want to trust you. It's a high trust industry. But after you've built that trust, man, it's nice to pull out your cell phone and pull up a product code or a piece of information or a weight rating or reserve something, or set something up to pick up on the way home. So I think that that's going to continue. The next slide is kind of a breakdown of that into residential versus non-residential, what we call commercial contractors, just to see if there's any difference to them. And so one of the things that you do see in the commercial contractors is there is a little bit of a spring back to in-person at the end of 2023 when we did the research again. It's still not as pronounced as you see in other industries. In a lot of other industries in 2023, there was a huge return to brick and mortar. you would see a lot of these charts would completely reverse and go back to in person. Everybody went back to the restaurants. Everybody went back on trips in 2023. And what I thought was interesting is while the non-residential contractor did start to do a little bit more in person again, they still visited the website more. They still called less. Maybe they didn't email quite as much. So I think that this shows that contractor behavior has changed, and it's probably going to be changed for a while. So it's one of the reasons why I think digital is so important, and it's critical to what rental companies are thinking about for now and their future.
Yeah, no, that's very true, and we're seeing the same thing as I'm working with rental houses and rental operations of all sizes. That I think you made a really good point there, where like the first interaction, they're like, we're not sure about you, we want to kind of feel you out. But for repeat transactions, if you're doing the same job as something you've done before, you've worked with the rental company, they've helped understand your needs, and they know what size of trencher you need, or what type of equipment may be best for this type of a job. And you're able to build on that with more digital reordering is definitely something I'm hearing a lot of. But your initial like touch point, and then I think the other side as well is, and this is talking about like how we're completing rental transactions. I think the other thing I would add is that I think if the question was asked, how likely are you to check out a rental company online before you call, before you visit, before you send an email? I'm hearing and seeing a lot of more, non-customers going to the website. They want more details. So you talked about like specs or usage tips and stuff like that. They want to be more informed before they even talk to your rental sales reps. And I think that's a huge opportunity, and kind of a threat, I guess, for the other side, right? Is they're expecting this level of service. They've been upgraded in other businesses to be able to do more digital touch points, and that's where rental needs to be able to stay relevant and stay complete that way, competing.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think one of the interesting things here is a lot of attendees are probably thinking, is this a bait and switch? I'm attending a webinar on AI, and all they've talked about is digitizing my website. But I think you and I both felt it was important that, and we're going to get into plenty of AI and future use
Absolutely.
cases, current use cases. But if you're not doing some of this stuff, if you're not even just thinking about that broader digitization of what you do as part of your AI strategy, then I think you're missing the boat. And so I think that's why we wanted to include some of this of, the AI is great and it's fun and it's a good buzzword and we can start implementing it now. But if you're not doing some of these basics of digitization, then you've got to start doing some of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. In order for AI to be effective, it has to have a good base of information, and that can be sometimes through your rental management system. Sometimes that can be through other ways you collect feedback or customer demands. But it needs the baseline. So you're right. If all of your sales activity is in a notebook in somebody's pocket, then you're not going to be able to build upon that with AI pieces. So
100%.
cool. Yeah, we've got a couple other pieces here, so we can move through this a little bit quicker. But the two things I wanted to make sure we touched on here was you talked about the customer sentiment and their demand, and really the big piece is we know that like really good qualified rental sales reps, among all the other skilled trades, is definitely in a shortage. So if you can be focusing them on things where they're actually able to create more deals, close more deals, as opposed to answering the same question over and over again, is so important so that they can actually focus on the stuff where they add more value. And then the other one is definitely on payments. Anybody who's not collecting their payments online is definitely eating up a lot of your team's time, and making it harder to get paid. When a customer, maybe they want to pay, but if you make it hard for them to pay you, instead of that being paid in 10 days, it's paid in 40 days. And we know that the cash cycle is so important for keeping rental operations healthy.
Absolutely.
Cool. So as we look to the future, again, your team did a lot of great research here on what some areas where the future could be impacted. So you want to talk a little bit about some of the insights you gleaned from this?
Yeah, and I think we can let everybody read the individual sections and percentages, but I think the overarching thing that's important to highlight is how large a percentage of your customer base, your contractor base, your repeat business wants to do things digitally. and to your point, some of the technologies that we're going to talk about today and some of the AI tools and things that you can do to enhance the experience are all based on digitizing the experience in the first place. So if you're not already communicating with your customers digitally, then you're not going to be using tools like Grammarly's AI or ChatGPT to write really effective sales emails or check-in emails or anything like that. So you've got to start with this. And customers want it. I mean, 42% of customers want digital quotes. 53% want to find their equipment and tools online. 49% want to schedule pickup and delivery. So your customers want this. You need to go ahead and be providing this for them. And this is where you can start to build that incremental tool in there that really can help improve performance and the customer experience.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I kind of took away from this was that, you know, only 3% think that there's going to be no changes to these areas, right? So everybody recognizes that technology is going to be impacting both your rental experience as a customer, as a contractor, but also for your team as well, and getting the things paid or requested or keeping things moving, for your equipment turnovers.
Absolutely.
One of the big areas where, you know, AI is not that far away, and we're already seeing early usage of it is, again, as we talked about, you need to have a digital process in order to layer AI on top of it. But we were working with a rental company, and they kept not collecting on customer damage. Like it's a huge thing. Rental car industry got really good at this a long time ago, where, you know, they'll be looking for every opportunity to make sure that they're not out of pocket for it. I think the equipment rental industry, which is more relationship driven, as you were saying earlier, I think we were a little bit more behind. And I would say that most rental companies don't try and collect for every damage because there is expected wear and tear, given that these are industrial equipment and they're on job sites. But you know, if a customer, you know, smashes a windshield, typically that's something they should definitely be paying for, or like, you know, blowing a tire or knocking the tracks off, stuff like that. The really big obvious ones maybe get collected, but like the smaller ones, so broken headlight or, you know, a flat or a slack tire, but not a flat tire. You know, they weren't doing the work, or they weren't training their teams to actually do those inspections, or the inspections they were doing again went in a notebook in somebody's pocket, and never really got back to the customer or back to the office to be charging for those. So what we saw was, you know, a really common thing would be that most of the damage went either undetected, which affected the next rental, or uncharged for, which obviously affected the bottom line. So after implementing the digital inspection process, they went from detecting and charging for 3% of all rentals had some sort of damage that was charged to 9%, and creating the opportunity to really cover their bottom line. And the biggest change here was they detected it right when the customer was still with them, as opposed to a week later getting an email from your rental company saying, "Hey, you damaged my skid steer." That's a terrible customer experience, right? So customers aren't happy. They're going to push back and dispute when they're still in front of you and you can point to it in person. Is a complete unlock of both shared understanding, and nobody feels that they're being taken advantage of. And with one of our customers, yeah, they were able to bill for damage as opposed to eat the cause of damage for over $15 million in 1 year, which is an absolute game changer if we could find money like that.
Yeah, I had actually had the opportunity to be prior to ARA to help out with some of the technology that you're talking about here. And one of the things that I think we all forget, and it's pretty fascinating, is some of what it does is just improve the process. I mean, you think about what the process was for damage detection before. Let's say you've got a driver who's good at taking pictures, and they remember to take those pictures. I mean, sometimes they don't remember all the attachments, much less taking the pictures. But this helps them remember to take the pictures. And then you have to worry about quality of pictures. Because what if it's terrible lighting, the wrong angle, picture the wrong side? You didn't get all sides. There's so much that can be improved in the process. And then you mentioned one of the big ones is You know, it's Friday afternoon, you're picking up the piece of equipment from a job site. Everybody's busy. The pictures are there, but nobody compares it against the previous pictures until, wait, it's Monday morning now. Well, we're busy again Monday morning, so we're not going to do anything with it on Monday morning. So maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday we get to it. Now we're calling a contractor saying a piece of equipment we've had for a week is damaged by them. And it's like, yeah, I got it that way, is what you're going to hear. So there's so much in the process that some of these tools can help improve that you don't even think about. Like, you know, that picture wasn't good, take it again, or you didn't get all angles, to make sure and take this angle. And then down to the detail of highlighting a certain area, saying, what, check this area closer because here's the before and after, and they look different. And now you're in front of the customer and you can show them that in real time. And it just changes the conversation. Because most of your customers are good customers. And if they're truly doing major damages to the piece of equipment, then they understand there's a cost to that. They don't want to be nickel and dimed for everything. But if it's true, like, oh, I didn't realize the guy ran into the thing, I'm going to go charge my subcontractor for that. You'd be surprised how those conversations changed. But how that process happens was critical to actually collecting a lot of that money.
Yeah, no, there's so much in there. So I appreciate you sharing on that. Here's just an example of one of the things that we're working on as well, which is layering on the AI side, right? So you talked about, you know, as we're going through this with customers, you know, some of the early ones, they're like, okay, I'm forced to take 4 pictures, but the pictures end up being their boots, right? Or like they forgot, you know, it's process, it's new, and they're back at the, you know, end of day and they're trying to close out their tickets and they're like, I have no photos, right? So how can we make sure that both we're getting the photos, we're getting the right photos, and that's where some of these AI models that we're working on can come in. So, you know, is it a picture where the actual equipment is in it? That's question number one. Do we understand what type of equipment it is? Can we categorize that? And then we can actually do a compare on the before and after. So one way is obviously we can show the user, hey, this would have looked like before, but AI can do that much faster than the user and they can catch those subtle details. So being like, hey, we identified that this, you know, this tire is an issue, or like this decal has been completely knocked off because it's been scraped against something, who knows, right? So that's where a big opportunity is to be able to say, okay, in real time, oh, you didn't get all the pictures, can you take a new picture of the left side? Things like this just make sure that the data coming in is accurate, and then we're able to extend that and give that information in real time out. So a big focus for us right now is, you know, making this as easy and fast as possible with the least amount of like human intervention, so we can get them on to their next job, which is what we really want to be doing. Cool. All right. A couple other just inspections best practices just to mention here as well. Things that we've seen drive a lot more success with this, as you are talking about how we use technology. At your checkout process, the best practice is 7 photos. That may seem like a lot, but if you get all 4 sides and then any specific areas that are either more frequently damaged or, you know, things that may be at risk. So you want to take a picture of like the engine bay, perhaps, if it's something that could get, you know, bogged down. Tires is another common one, but 7 photos is generally best case. And we want the photos at the last time us as the rental company touches the piece of equipment. So best is if it's checkout, so the customer's picking it up, we do it then. If it's delivery, we deliver it and then we unload it from the truck and then we take our photos, because we say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, we're handing it off to you. This is what it looked like. And they're able to acknowledge that and then get the customer signature. Or again, because it's digital, we can have location and date timestamps on the photos to say, hey, this was your site. And then at the check-in again, same angles. This is gonna be with the prompts, this is gonna be with the tool. And then again, get the customer signature to acknowledge any damage, all as part of that process as well, is a big opportunity for us.
We had a quick question that relates to that I think we can answer pretty quickly. Warren Clayton was asking, how is AI going to check for damages? And put really simply, Warren, it's noticing the difference in the visual. Just like you and I can notice the difference, or a Tesla can tell it's a stop sign, or it's a green light, or there's a car or a truck next to them. It's kind of a similar idea. The pictures are not the same. And so it can highlight an area and say, you need to check and look at this. The more data it gets, the better it gets. So certainly there might be some times where it's confused by sunlight or a glint or something that's extra dirty at first. But the more it learns from those processes, the more it's going to be like a human and look at it and say, wait a minute, that piece of metal isn't supposed to be inverted like that, or that glass isn't supposed to be missing. So some of them will be pretty obvious. And those are really the ones that are most important too. A tiny little scratch here and there on a piece of construction equipment probably isn't what you're charging for anyway. But if there's a cylinder knocked loose on a piece of equipment that your driver didn't notice at first, that's something that you want to make sure and catch, and you want to probably charge for.
Yeah, no, that's a great call out. And currently we're training it on, I think, about 200,000 images a month, with before and after. So definitely as we continue to roll this out wider, and get more examples, and then yeah, we just continuously improve the model based on the feedback. So as customers are saying, yes, this was a successful detection, or this wasn't a successful detection, we use that to make the model even better. So it's still early days, but we're still able to capture a lot of previously unclaimed damages, and believe that there's still more opportunity for us that way as well. That's a great question, but yeah, definitely keep those going. Next here, as we're thinking about what the future could hold, I'd be curious, here's some ideas on different areas where AI could show up in your rental business. So we can speak about a couple of these examples, but also what I'd love from the group is, what areas have you identified, whether it's, possible today with off-the-shelf tools, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well, or areas where it could be more future oriented and say, hey, it would be really cool if it could solve this problem for me. So even if it's not a question, you can throw those ideas in the chat, in the Q&A section as well. We'd be love to include those in the conversation here. So Josh, of the list here, which one kind of jumps out to you as like, hey, it would be really cool if that one could be available today?
So I think one of the ones that's talked about most commonly that I think will be a big value, I think it will be a big value long term, that we're on the cusp of, is equipment maintenance and repair. On some levels, it's things like predictive maintenance, but on other levels, it's things that are a lot closer, like repair and troubleshooting. I would say 9 months ago, I put into Chat GPT, so this would be Chat GPT 3 or 3.5. I have a Bobcat T190 that's overheating. What's wrong? And it gave me some really good results. And so after it gave me the results, and I forget what the three main things were that it gave me, I said, well, then how do I check for which one of those are the culprits? And it gave me the right answer. And that is, what, 9 months ago on a GPT. You've also got companies out there. There's one out of London. I want to say the name was SoundAware, that's using audio signals on cranes to detect issues with maintenance. It's very expensive and difficult to maintain a crane because you have to get up into the air to tell how things are going, what's going on. But cranes make a lot of noises. The metal creaks, the wires whine, the pulleys make noise, and different tensions make different noises. And so they've got devices that are sitting on these cranes learning what this particular crane sounds like, and then can guess when the crane is out of alignment, or maybe something is going on, or somebody needs to climb the crane and check it out. So I think equipment maintenance is coming. It's not here. It's a good practice point. You could have it for service technicians who are wanting to learn, to practice. A customer calls and has this problem. A pressure washer won't start. What's the most common reasons that might happen? And you could probably even have it quiz you on some of that stuff. So I think that's certainly one of those coming, but super valuable. But there's so many of them that I think are already here today. I was talking with a friend, and I had fed into ChatGPT take a look at these websites, which were a few of their competitor websites. Now take a look at my website, and I want you to compare the strengths and weaknesses of all three websites, and then give me examples of how I can improve the SEO on my website to lean into my strengths and be better combat my competition in my particular market. And the answers were awesome. Now, some of them were boilerplate, but they weren't all boilerplate. You know, a few of the answers on there were spot on to that person's model and areas where they needed to have more or could do more with what they were doing on the website to attract people. And that was done with, I guess I had the paid subscription to ChatGPT. But it was done with writing good prompts. It was done with feeding it the right kind of information. You know, similar things that I think you should start playing with and could be used on websites as soon as tomorrow are things that improve the website user experience. It is so hard for small contractors and especially a DIY to find things on your website because they're not experts in fleet or equipment. They don't necessarily always know what they're looking for. I mean, think about the phone calls you get. There's 12 different names for a jumping jack, a tamp, a whacker packer, a rammer, you know. And if you have a website that doesn't understand all of those conventions, then it makes it really difficult. But if you had a GPT powered chatbot on your website or something like that, where somebody could type in, I need a tamper to tamp a trench after I excavate, it can point you to the right thing on your website. And that kind of stuff can happen today. So I think that there's a lot that we can start using and start implementing today while kind of setting the stage for some of that cool stuff that can happen in the future.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I think you mentioned it's all about, you know, the prompt and stuff like that. But I think the other side of that is that people just need to try it, right? So, you know, you won't like, will every use case be solved with like an off-the-shelf tool like ChatGPT? No. Will it be wrong some of the time? Yes. But if you don't try it, you don't get those huge unlocks. So, like you said, using it for SEO, helping it write a first draft of content. You know, we have to be, you know, if you want to have good SEO, you need lots of content on the website, you want to have helpful guides. You can have it write the first draft of something or a customer case study, you know, customer testimonial that you're working on, you know, rewording it. You mentioned Grammarly AI, stuff like that. There's all these opportunities to just help your team be more effective and more efficient. And that's available even today.
Yeah,
If we look at, yeah, go ahead.
I think you're spot on there in getting comfortable and using it. You know, I am sure many of us know people who don't know how to Google very well, and it's kind of painful to watch them search for something. I believe that using GPTs and using some of this AI technology is going to be very similar in that some people are going to be much better utilizing it than others. I've learned so much through just practicing it with this year. My goal is pretty much every day to use it for something. And some of the refinements and things that I have learned or used it for that I wouldn't have expected have been really fascinating. So I have put some data in there to help me graph some things so I could visualize, because humans absorb visual so much better than wrote Excel spreadsheets. So I visualized data through ChatGPT. I've used it in management. I had an employee, a brand new employee on my team who said something kind of curious to me. And out of my own curiosity, I fed it into ChatGPT to see what ChatGPT recommended for it. And then I ended up talking to them about it. But how you write the question is incredibly important. And that's like, I think one of the things that you learn through practice. Like when I put that question in, had to say, from the perspective of an executive coach, if somebody who was new from the team said this thing, it was a long question to give it the framework for the right answer. I did the same thing about a year ago. I wrote a electrification standard for manufacturers, and I was pretty proud of it. I thought, man, it took 20 years of experience to write up this amazing electrification standard that I wrote. And then I put it into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT wrote an amazing one too, that I actually stole some of the ideas from and put in mine that I thought was really special. And, it took a good question. So I had to ask something like, from the perspective of mixed fleet construction equipment owners, Write a one-page persuasive argument to manufacturers on how adoption will improve through standardized electrification and charging standards. Or, it was really complicated, the question that I had to end up with. But if you can figure out those frameworks, those things to practice, it's amazing what you can do. Grammarly, you mentioned just a minute ago. I love using Grammarly because it can add some nice color to some of the stuff that you say. And I don't necessarily always edit what I say based on Grammarly, but I reuse the same words a lot. And I didn't realize how much I did that until I started using Grammarly. And it's like, Josh, maybe you should try a separate word that's saying this word again in the same paragraph. And stuff like that, I think if you learn how to incorporate and utilize that in your daily work life, or even daily home life, I think that you can do some really cool stuff, and you can start doing that cool stuff today.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And yeah, there's a whole like just search prompt engineering. There's a whole like subtrade for that. ChatGPT or OpenAI released like a PDF of kind of some best practices. But no, you're spot on there. And you mentioned like visualizing data, and that's what the next slide here was around. For this particular one, I just gave it a 50,000 row spreadsheet of all the transactions in one of our demo companies, and said, okay, like I think I asked my question around, yeah, I said, can you chart this for the top 10 divisions? I set the labels, and then within 20 seconds it generated it. So instead of having to do all the totaling manually and then do it, also was done inside of 30 seconds. You can ask for, who's my best salesperson, or like what equipment is really popular right now and stuff like that. Things that maybe, if you were, wanting to work on your business, you can kind of chat with your data is kind of a phrase that's being thrown around a bit right now. And instead of having to go and find the insights, it can actually surface it for you. So these are easy off the shelf stuff that you can start using today as well, which is
I think there's a lot of times where if you're really good with Excel, you can do some wizardry that gets you to the same data. But if you feed the data into a GPT, then you can start to mine it a lot faster and play around with it to see which parts of it are usable and which things you want to do. So you don't have to be an Excel expert or a formula expert. You can start to work through it and see what matters and what doesn't matter. Somebody put in the chat overbooked fleet or near overbooked fleet, things like that, where it can spot trends. There was a company, and I'm not sure if they're still in the industry or not, but they were doing AI weather detection to allow construction equipment insurance for rained out job sites. There's so much potential if you just start putting your data in there and start watching for trends and asking it for trends and learning how to spot some of those things that go beyond some of your standard charting that you would normally see.
Yeah, no, and that's a great example, and yeah, the one from the audience as well. Overbook fleet is something that should be a solvable problem. If you just look at your on hand and you look at your reservation quantities, that's something that definitely is an area for automation and for AI to make recommendations. And instead of you finding it out, at close of business on the Tuesday that your Wednesday is overbooked, it can flag that stuff to you earlier, because maybe you could have repaired one of your skid steers or whatever and gotten it ready for that next reservation because it's, it was damaged or just down for maintenance. So
yeah, we had somebody ask, what are some of the places that you can actually feed this data into now and do some of this stuff? And most of the major GPTs out there, like ChatGPT, you can do that today. Fun enough, we actually have the Future of Equipment Rental event coming up in January of next year. It's actually going to be on January 28th. And one of the things that we're going to have in that is a hands-on AI GPT workshop where you're going to learn how to write really great prompts. Pull out your cell phone, pull out your iPad or computer, and we're actually going to use it to solve problems in equipment rental businesses today live, which should be super fun. And then we've also got a bunch of great speakers, including Akile, who's a fellow Canadian, and I think actually a customer of yours from GTA Equipment, he's actually an AI TEDx speaker and owns an independent single location rental company. So he's going to be talking about how he's using it and doing some super cool things. So We've got more of that coming where you can actually practice and try and workshop using this stuff.
You know, that's really good. And just for the audience, so some options. The big ones are ChatGPT with OpenAI. The other one is Google Gemini. They're pushing really hard. And then Meta, so the Facebook family, also has one as well that's growing in capabilities. And then just like we talked about before with experimentation is um, if it's something you really want to try and solve, I would check with more than one model because some models are better at certain tasks than other ones.
Yeah.
So just because one model uh, didn't understand your question or didn't come up with a great result, of course that's going to happen. Try a different model to see if it can do better, and then for that time, for that future use cases, you can use those as well. So that's definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point too. When I think about maintenance and repair, when I was putting in the information to troubleshoot the T190 Bobcat skid loader, uh, it didn't have any of the operator's manual information, manufacturer information. I mean, it was able to find some of those things, I'm sure, but it's not like it was a particular AI that's been trained on equipment maintenance or had access to tons of manuals and troubleshooting reports or something like that. It was just the general AI that was trained for general use that I asked an incredibly specific question. So I think as we get software companies like yourself and others that are taking some of these off-the-shelf tools and then training them on things that we do every day, it's just going to make them exponentially more powerful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And on the service side, this is something that we've had for a while is around, your technicians, they service all kinds of equipment every day, and they're like, okay, what's the right oil for this? What's the right gasket for this? And so what we did was we looked at all the service history again, because we have the history on the fleet, and said, okay, this is the most likely parts that you would be using for this type of equipment. So either by make model or by cat class. And these are the ones that we think you should be using for this. So those little accelerants every day, saving a couple minutes of each technician's time is a huge opportunity as well.
We had a question on what is the definition of a GPT. So for those of you who want to go down the rabbit hole, I'm going to put a article from actually early last year on what a GPT is and what it's doing, and it goes down the rabbit hole. It is a long read, but if you really want to understand how they're working, it's a super, super interesting read.
Yeah, no, that'd be awesome. All right, we got a little bit left here. Let's see if this will play. So what this is this is for when a salesperson has to write the email of sending out a quote. What this is doing is actually this one's using an example of selling a piece of fleet, but it uses the equipment manual, or sorry, not manual, the marketing sheets plus the actual quote itself and all the options that they chose. And then it wrote the first draft. So this is something that you send a lot of emails every single day. If you can have a more contextually aware, I've seen emails where it's like, here's your quote, right? Like we're talking about this is a service business, this is a relationship business, and their email is here's your quote. As opposed to you're like, hey, you talked about, how you needed to dig this trench, and here's a quote and details. So if you can provide a little bit more personalization and context and provide that to your user or to your customers, there's definitely an opportunity to kind of just get a little bit more brand goodwill and stuff like that as well. So just another quick little accelerant on the sales side of the business.
I think that's a great example of the evolution of using some of these tools because, a poor sales rep says, here's a quote. At least they're able to send a digital quote. So that's a step up than I guess the worst case scenario of snail mailing them something.
Yeah.
But, the step up from that would be, your best sales reps typically have templates. And so they'll copy and paste the template in there where they're going to kind of go in and fill in the blanks and personalize it and stuff like that. This is just the next part of the evolution of that, of then being able to say, well, what are the best practices of my best people? And how do I apply them to everybody so they can easily use the same tips, tools, and techniques that those people already use and implement those? And so that's all that's really doing. And I think that's great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right. Let's see if we got a little bit of time here. See if we have any more questions we want to answer here before we run out. Cool. So first question, yes, the copy of this recording you're going to get afterwards. So you're going to get that sent off to you so you can share it with your team. And I'm glad that we're getting you excited about some of the AI opportunities. Um, and
Yeah, I'd love to see some more people on January 28th at the Future of Equipment Rental before the ARA show doing this hands-on with me. I think it's going to be a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a question here around how AI could be used for e-commerce. So we talked a little bit about the use case that Josh was saying about like helping the conversational, you may, especially the DIY side of the business. Hey, I need to dig a hole, and it can ask you some questions, help recommend a piece of fleet. So that's one way. Another way will be as you're building out your websites. We talked about SEO and content and stuff like that, enabling it on the e-commerce side to be able to pre-write some of your descriptions. Do that first draft, and then you can tweak it from there. But instead of taking it a 5-minute task, it becomes a 1-minute task. You've got 200 pieces of fleet to put up. Everybody's got better things to do than just be typing up, descriptions of skid steers. That's another way that I think it's going to show up on the e-commerce side, is on those on how you're building your website and making it faster to generate the content as well. So
Yeah, I think that today even I'd consider it an accelerant, just kind of like going from an encyclopedia or a library to Google. Now we're going from Google to AI generated responses. It's still not perfect, but it is so good in many areas that it can help you skip steps and create efficiencies. And that's what you want to do and you want to get used to doing. So you work that into your daily usage and become more effective at what you do.
all right, awesome. Well, we're pretty much at time here. So thank you again, Josh, for your time and your wisdom. Look forward to the future rental event in January. And definitely, seeing a lot of people start playing with AI. I was at an industry event, and people were talking about how they're fearful of AI. Hey, I've seen what's it, Terminator. I've seen how robots take over, and really, that's not what we're talking about here. Just because it can sound like a human, doesn't mean it needs to be scary. It's going to be affecting all of our businesses. So the more you can start playing with it, the sooner you're going to get the value from it, and you're going to be the leading business and not be left behind. So
I agree with that. I do have to admit though, I do say please and thank you to my AIs right now, just in case, just in case I'm not the person that they dislike.
That's fair. That's fair. Cool. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you all in the future sessions.
Thanks, folks.